Welcome to another episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with Emmanuel Acho. You've heard the saying, behind every great man is a strong woman. But who is behind a great woman? I'm joined by husband to the current vice president and presidential nominee, Kamala Harris. You know him as a second gentleman, but for the next few moments, we'll simply get to know him as Doug. Doug, how you doing, my friend?
Going.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Okay, let's start with a little rapid fire.
Okay.
Right? Let's start with a little rapid fire. I'll ask you something. Don't think too long. Just give me the first answer that comes to your mind. Super Bowl champion this year is?
Bills.
Oh, that's
I'm going. I think it might be their time.
I hear you. Okay, what was the last great book you read?
It's been a while since I've been on the show, but I read this book called The Wager.
Okay.
And it's one of these mutiny shipwrecks set in the old days. It's by the guy who wrote Killers of the Flower Moon.
Okay, let's go with, you can only listen to one song the rest of your life. What would it be?
So I'm hoping Kamala's still with me. So since we are 7 days apart and we don't agree on a lot of music, but we do agree on Prince.
Okay.
I'll do like Purple Rain. That's
okay.
something we
can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
One meal you have to eat the same meal over and over for the rest of your life. What's the meal?
It's probably the meal I've eaten the most in my life, which is Kamala's famous roast chicken. I'll just keep rolling with that forever. It's so good.
Good answer, a safe answer.
But it's really good.
I love that. Okay, my hope, get to know you. So I'm going to ask you a question I heard once, and it stuck with me. I will ask it to you. I believe that here in the next several months, if not already, you will become one of the most popular men in the world. But tell me something about yourself that I can't find on Google.
Ooh. I've never had that question before. Well, Google doesn't show your character. Okay. I mean, Google can't really show, how I grew up and how my father and my mother raised me, and the fact that they're 87 and 83 and they're still around. They've been together almost 70 years, and the values that they imparted on me of loyalty, your family first, hard work, sticking up for others, not taking any crap, and, just being there for other people.
Let me ask you this, because obviously right now you're working intently, but when was the last time you laughed so hard your belly hurt? Like, when was the last time that happened?
So even this is the most intense experience I think we've ever been through. And I liken it to my lawyer friends. Imagine being in trial every single day, that it feels like that, but you still have to be able to be human. Mm-hmm. And so just the other day, she and I had a rare day where, we were both in DC and both had to go to the White House to do things. And she walked in to my office, and our whole team was in. We were preparing, and you can hear the scurrying. And she came in, and we just both cracked up at the surrealness of, like, here we are in my office, and she gave me this big hug. It's like, I love you too. Let's go back to work. So I just thinking about that moment, I'm still laughing about it. Yeah. It's those little small moments I can have with Kamala in the midst of this surrealness that we're going through.
Let me ask you the inverse. When was the last time you cried?
There's a mezuzah at the vice president's residence. It might have been then because my father cried. So,
okay, tell me that story.
Yeah, so we wanted to have a mezuzah, which is a very traditional Jewish item. It's a little Torah portion inside, and you put it on your doorpost. And we wanted to have one at the residence. Again, Kamala wanted to make sure we did that, and we wanted to find the right mezuzah. So we actually found one from Atlanta that had been at a temple that Martin Luther King had actually preached at. So it had kind of a civil rights, Jewish. So for the two of us, like, this is the mezuzah. So we put that on the front door, invited my parents, Cole and Ella, my mom, and my father is a man of few words and doesn't exactly show his emotion all the time. And to see him get teary watching his son, me, hammer the mezuzah into his daughter-in-law, who happens to be the vice president of the United States, our home, it was intense.
What was it about that made him cry?
I just think he's a Jew in his mid-80s. He was born in 1937. His family came here from Europe in 1900, half of which died in the Holocaust, those who didn't come here. So to see the journey of a Jewish kid himself being the father of this Jewish kid, who's now second gentleman, hammering a mezuzah into the vice president's residence. I mean, that's powerful. That's kind of the American dream.
Yeah, I've heard you as I've listened to you. You said the VP. You've obviously said you referred to she, Kamala. What do you call the vice president?
Madam Vice President. No, it's very formal in the household. You know, the typical couple. You know, couple names. You know,
there's no is there a nickname that?
You know,
just asking, Doug. I had to ask the question.
She calls me Dougie. I can tell you that because she'll say Dougie.
Yeah.
You know.
What does she call you when you're in trouble?
It's Dougie. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
The tone changes. So it's like, no. If I get Douglas, it's bad. Dougie 90% of the time. Tone might change, but when I get the Douglas, screwed up here.
I like that. All right, let me ask you this one. As we talk about you all's relationship, in this day and age, Doug, you got to slide into the DMs. You know what that means? Like somebody sliding into the...
yeah, man, I know what that means.
It was a hip check. Who made the first move between you and the vice president?
So it was a blind date, and it was in my entertainment law career. I was with a client, and the client brought his wife into the meeting, and it was one of my partners had been on the matter, and I came in kind of as a fresh set of eyes. And 45 minutes into the meeting, I basically, by the end of that night, I had Kamala Harris's number. So it was a blind date. The real move was I called her the next morning, and then I left this.
Was that the awkward voice note?
Yeah. And that was the first move. That almost was the last move.
What exactly did you say?
Hey, it's Doug. And it was just one of those, I'm calling the attorney general at 8:30 in the morning. Why am I doing this? What is happening? And I thought I blew it. But it was really when she called back later that day and we talked for an hour. And that literally felt like our first date. Now, and then when we had our first date, a few days later, we almost looking back, like we were already talking about our future, like we were going to be together.
First date was at Craig's?
Craig's, yeah.
What'd you order? Chicken parm?
Same thing, yeah, every time. I've never ordered anything I've never ordered anything different. Every time it's the same. Caesar, extra anchovies, and chicken parm.
Chicken parm.
And a little side of spinach. That's it. I don't even have to talk when I go in there.
What's the current date night with you and the vice president like?
None.
None?
Right now, yeah. Right now, it's with this election coming up, we just really looked at each other and decided we can't really have much couple time. I'm going to focus on this election, focus on winning, and we'll have that nice couple time and date night after that.
After the
in
election.
November, yeah.
I hear you. Your answer to this question will probably help a lot of people out in society, me most notably. Sometimes I just ask questions that I pre-wrote and thought of, but I'm genuinely curious about this one. How have you been able, powerful Hollywood lawyer, thriving, budding career, how have you been able to put your career on the back burner to prioritize your wife? How and why?
So, first of all, thank you, because I did love my career, missed it, very good at it, and it's something that I loved every minute of the day. Mm-hmm. Taking a step back to support my wife in an opportunity to become the first ever woman vice president and vice president was a no-brainer, because what an opportunity for her. Just like in our marriage, when I've had opportunities, I changed firms, for instance, during our marriage, and that was something that was a big deal. Mm-hmm. She supported me on that, and we did that as a couple. I struggled a little bit at the beginning. Okay, what do I do now? I worked so hard to help them get elected. What do I do? And now that
you struggled?
Because my legal career ended pretty abruptly. Gotcha. Because when she got called from then candidate Biden to be on the ticket in August of 2020, unbeknownst to me at the time, that was the last day I ever practiced law. I didn't know it at the time. She's the one who really said, look, you're the first guy. you can really lean into gender equity issues, which became even more pronounced after the Dobbs decision with the overturn of Roe v. Wade. You're also the first Jewish person. There's a lot, at that time, there already was a lot of anti-Semitism and hate, and she kind of challenged me to use the microphone on that issue. What better way to step aside from something I love than to support the woman I love, to help her in this, not only in this election, but her as vice president, her in this campaign.
The vice president. Tell me who she is without telling me what she does.
Right. Yeah. So you're seeing her in full right now. I think a lot of people who are just starting to get to know her, I try to say the joyful warrior. And I mentioned that in my speech, where the joyful part, what we get to experience in our family, Kamala, the one who, if you're in town here in LA and we're home, she's cooking you Sunday dinner, whether it's that roast chicken or whatever. You know, sitting with her at the dinner table, the breakfast counter, cooking with her, it's really about...
Oh, so you cook. So you're not just eating, you cooking too.
Sous chefing, maybe.
So you handing the forks and the knives.
I do music and make some drinks and kind of make sure everyone's happy, and then maybe pick a few dishes here and there. But she's really, that's the thing that you wouldn't find, is that her as a participant in our family, where it's not just, oh my God, it's all about her. It's not at all. But it's the warrior part. It's the one who became a prosecutor when her best friend in high school was being molested by her stepfather. It's the person who spent her entire career fighting for us, for the people. So that's who she is. She does it from a place of pure public service. How can she help as many people as possible?
The name Kamala, who coined that one? Where'd that one come from?
The kids. I think it was Ella. And because they were getting along so well, and they were really bonding, and the term stepmother, like they just the Disney movies, and it was just like, and then Kamala, Mamala, it just kind of all came together. So
I like that,
and it's been cute. It's nice
because we live in a society where I think the beautiful part of our society, if done well, is the amalgamation of color, of culture, of religion. I think if done well, different colors, different cultures coming together to be as one is the most beautiful part of living in this country.
That's right.
How have you all made that work?
We make it work by trying to listen to each other and understand where we're all coming from. Different faiths, different color, different everything just between the two of us. But then she comes to the table with the whole family. And I come to the table with the whole family. Like anything, being curious and listening and wanting to learn about other things. And that's how we've all, come together.
When I spend time with people, as of late, I spent a lot of time in the Jewish community. My most recent book, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Jew, it really immersed me in the Jewish community. And I had several aha moments, if you will. Have there been any aha moments in you all's relationship, or what's the greatest one for you?
So one of the great moments with us was I didn't have to explain to her what a Jew was. Like she understood who I was, I understood who she was. And she, in fact, was the one who really has pushed me to speak out and speak out on anti-Semitism, speak out on hate, and try to make those connections between all the different coalitions and all the different communities. And post October 7th, when as a Jewish person, you're just feeling the weight of that and being in this position, which I'm highly accountable to the community. I'm the first Jew ever to be a White House principal. So again, with her pushing for me to get out there, even when it's hard, even when I don't want to do it, to go ahead and do it and have those hard conversations.
Let me ask you, because you mentioned October 7th. I was about 10 minutes from here in Century City, Fox Studio lot. I was at work. I leave work. I see that my friend, an Israeli woman, is on Instagram Live. I see that her heart is broken and she's saying a whole bunch of things that I at the time didn't know what she was saying, what it all meant. I just saw that her heart was broken. So I called her after I left set, checked in on her, etc. I've realized I can never understand the amount of pain, fear, trepidation that so many of my Jewish brothers and sisters are going through. What breaks your heart the most about what's currently going on in the Middle East?
Well, I mean, that situation, just as a Jewish person, it's just devastating. The fact that people were murdered, dismembered, raped, left on the side of roads, hunted down. These were kids at a music festival. These were, grandmothers, moms. These were grandfathers, people just living their lives who were just brutally murdered in cold blood in a way that Jews haven't seen since the Holocaust. And if you look at the amount of carnage in Israel as a proportion to the population, it would just be, it's a devastating amount, plus the hostages, plus the fact that there are still hostages there, the fact that just recently 6 hostages were murdered, executed in cold blood, just on the verge of potentially being released. So there's just a lot of rawness, a lot of trauma. Then the fact that, there's denialism about it, there's distrust, disbelief. So that is all true. But what also is true is the loss of life of Palestinians, which is horrific. And so as a Jewish person, I'm able to say both things at the same time, and it doesn't have anything to do with the policy in Israel. And I think that's where this conversation gets mixed up a little bit, where, several of these things can all be true at the same time. And I think Kamala, the vice president, has said that very beautifully, and she said it very beautifully at her DNC speech.
Yeah. Before I ask you further about her, let me ask you, because you mentioned a question, and I'd be remiss not to ask. You mentioned a statement. You mentioned the word fear. Obviously, you travel with a security detail and all of the things, but is there an epigenetic fear that exists because of the Holocaust, because of October 7th? You are a Jewish man. Clearly, it may be irrational given how much detail you live with, but is there just an epigenetic fear that exists within you as a Jewish person based upon the trials and tribulations of your ancestors, which has led you to here? Does that exist?
Yes. Wow. What a question. I really, again, always try to practice what I say publicly, which is live proudly and openly and joyfully and not be afraid. Head up, shoulders back, and don't be afraid. Yeah. A lot of what Jews felt after October 7th, because of the history of the Jewish people, the Holocaust, there's always that feeling, and it's traumatizing. Yeah. It really is. But again, I want to just make sure whatever's happening, people still need to find what you love about being Jewish, and we want people to learn about it, demystify it, and again to tone down the hate and the anti-Semitism.
You mentioned earlier you were you've been the first of a lot of things, obviously, the first, second gentleman. It was brought to my attention this morning. I never thought about it before. It was brought to my attention. Usually when we're discussing men in political positions, we refer to them by their last name, Trump, Obama. But when you're talking about women in the political office, you refer to them by their first name, Hillary, Kamala. Oftentimes, referring to somebody by their first name, there's a familiarity and there's an undermining of authority. I never thought about it, literally until this morning. What does it say about kind of gender inequality, either subliminally or overtly, that there are little things like referring to a man in office by his last name, which signifies an authoritative position, versus a woman in office by their first name, which kind of signifies, yeah, we're friends.
Or even worse, when they intentionally mispronounce her name, which is another way to try to diminish or demean. Yeah, no, it's it needs to be equal. And I've been, trying to, live that. Someone who stepped away from a big career that I love very much to support her. And it's okay to do that. It doesn't make me feel like I'm any less of a dude by doing that. She supports me just as much as I support her. And, that equality should go in every single area. And whether it's how they're called and how, the name calling and how the name is pronounced. The respect needs to be there because it should be. It should be equal, and we've got to back it up with action.
No doubt about it.
Everyone talks about, things should be equal, but okay, they actually should be. And we know what you're saying, but what are you doing?
I would suggest, and many would suggest, that the VP's biggest skeptics, maybe her largest group of skeptics, would be white men. Yet you, a white man, a white Jewish man, have chosen to commit your life to her. Why would you suggest to America that white men should simply choose to commit 4 years to her?
Well, she's the best person for the job. It doesn't matter who you are in this country. I think she has drawn a really stark contrast with former President Trump. She's done that on the debate stage. She's done that on the economy. She's done that on national security issues. She's done that on the border. So just about any issue that anyone could care about, she's putting forth a plan. And she's tough, and she's got no fear. So if they're looking at, who's tough and strong and who's not, look at Kamala.
Yeah. I get more nervous sometimes watching people I love compete than I ever got competing myself.
Yeah.
Like, true story. Like, when I would watch my brother, watch my friends compete, my heart is palpitating at a rate it never has before. Did you get more nervous before you had to give your speech, or did you get more nervous watching the VP give her speech?
Man, you got some good questions. I needed to get through my speech first, then to be nervous for her. But then being around her, I knew she was going to crush it because she's just so confident, and the way I could see her, behind the scenes. Yeah. But I think for me, she was nervous for me because she knows I'd never done anything like that before, speak in front of 20,000 people, tens of millions out there. And so I think she'd seen me do a lot, and she's helped here and there. But I think on that one, she was probably more nervous for me because it was such a big moment for me. And then once I got through that, I was able to be a little nervous for her. And she had that game face before her speech and before the debate. So I really wasn't that worried.
Do you say, okay, now you took me there. Now you took me to one small deviation before this wrap. When people are in their game mode, sometimes you give them a fist bump, sometimes a quick kiss on the cheek, sometimes you say nothing. Yeah. When she locks in, when the VP is in that mode before the speech, what do you do?
I'm in the just let her be.
Got it.
Let her be, because she is in such a zone that I don't want to do anything to get her out of that, that warrior mentality that you can see her in. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just in the, okay, bye. We got some cool behind the scenes stuff at some point, like on my phone and others, where you just see it. It's like, man, this is like an elite athlete ready to just go out on the stage and or, an elite performer. And that's what she is. And it's really something to see.
I believe in speaking things into existence. So let me ask you this. Do you say if we win, or do you say when we win?
She's going to win. She's going to win this election. I think she's making the case to those folks who still need to know her better, get more information. And again, the contrast is so stark in this election. I think she showed everyone that she is ready to be president on day one. Prosecutor, elected DA, attorney general, senator, vice president, doesn't need to learn how to be a world leader. She already is a world leader, and she's ready. She's ready to go. And I think people are really seeing that, and I think she's going to do it.
Last question, because this has been great. When President Joe Biden won, I think the VP was on a run, and you see the meme, we did it, Joe, we did it, Joe. Assuming you're back at SoulCycle, when you find out that the VP has now won the election, what is the first thing you're going to say? So
you honestly think I'm going to be anywhere 3,000 miles away from her this time?
You might be in a DC SoulCycle.
No, all right, so let me I don't know if you know this. So the We Did It, Joe?
Yeah.
I filmed that on my phone. I got so lucky.
So that's why the camera was shaking.
I swear, yeah. Well, I saw her like getting on the phone. I was like, okay, this might be important. So and it's like, we did it, Joe. You're gonna be the president. And you know how many times that no matter what little unimpressive thing I do at home, and I'm like, we did it, Joe. It's never not funny. No, I'm gonna be very close to her right after that election, and hopefully we'll get the word sooner than later, and it'll be the biggest hug in the world, and someone else is gonna. But it would be funny if I did say we did it, Joe.
You absolutely should. You absolutely should. Well, Doug, man, thank you so much, man.
This is great.
Thank you so much. I fervently believe the world can become a better leader, a better lover, a better friend, and a better gentleman because of you. So thank you.
You're the best. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with Emmanuel Acho. Remember, lives are being changed, hearts, they're being touched, and it's all because of you. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, we're good.
Well, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with Emmanuel Acho. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We got a lot more in the works, and you never know who's going to be sitting in that chair next to me.